이란이라는 나라가 존재하는 오직 한 가지 이유는 지구상에서 이스라엘을 없애버리는 것이다. 이슬람은 평화의 종교가 아닙니다. 이슬람은 거짓이고 학살의 영입니다. 이래도 이스라엘이 아직도 전쟁 범죄 국가입니까?
Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, pounding the remainder of Hamas in Gaza and making strides against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Analysis from retired General Amir Avivi about the long game ahead against Iranian proxies. Plus, a Canadian pastor reports on the connection many Iranians feel with Israel. And Israeli innovation easing urban traffic congestion. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Jewish people in Israel just finished celebrating Simchat Torah, the same holiday they were observing on October 7th last year, when Hamas launched its vicious attack. Here's our latest war update. More than 1 year later, Israel is making significant strides to defeat the Hamas terrorists who committed the worst atrocity against the Jewish people since the Holocaust.
Since October 7th, a year ago, Israel has achieved most of its strategic objectives when it comes to Gaza, all with the idea of making sure that October 7th could never happen again.
The IDF claims hundreds of Hamas terrorists in Gaza have surrendered in recent days. The military also released information claiming 6 Al Jazeera journalists are affiliated with Hamas. Up north, Hezbollah fired more than 130 rockets into Israel, while the IDF continues to pound Hezbollah targets throughout Lebanon. Retired General Amir Avivi, head of the Israel Defense Security Forum, tells CBN News Hezbollah is being defeated.
The morale is very low. They are scared. They are running away. Occasionally, they put some resistance, but much lower than anything we expected. So overall, if we continue to attack systematically, there is a chance that we'll see this organization militarily dismantled.
Amir believes this might be the time the Lebanese could reclaim their country.
We are hoping that in Lebanon, the Lebanese people and the different groups in Lebanon, the Sunnis, the Christians, the Maronis, the Druze, will seize the moment and really get rid of Hezbollah.
Lebanese Member of Parliament Nadim Gamayel, a Christian, blames Hezbollah for Lebanon's woes.
They got themselves into this crisis, and they need to bear the responsibility. They should not think, not even for a second, to come to us and ask us to bear the responsibility. We will not solve the crisis for Hezbollah. In order to solve its crisis today, Hezbollah needs to hand over its weapons.
Jews around the world just celebrated Simchat Torah, marking the annual reading of the first 5 books of the Bible. In Israel, they're also reflecting on its promises to heal and restore their country. Israel's top general believes the IDF can win its war against Hezbollah in Lebanon and bring Israelis home after being driven out by Hezbollah rocket attacks.
In the north, there is a possibility of achieving a decisive outcome. We have thoroughly dismantled Hezbollah's senior command structure.
Israel is keeping up its strikes in Beirut, where their jets blew up Hezbollah weapons manufacturing and storage sites. And ground troops found another extensive tunnel system loaded with weapons, which elite Hezbollah forces were expected to use to launch an October 7th-style invasion of nearby Israeli locations. The IDF wiped out the tunnels and the structures above, which were also jammed with Hezbollah weapons. Israeli forces are displaying some of the 3,200 explosives and 2,500 anti-tank missiles and other deadly weapons they've captured from Hezbollah. The IDF's top military spokesman says all this shows why Israel had to defend itself by invading Lebanon and waging this war on Hezbollah, to protect itself from another massive terrorist attack like October 7th.
The amount of weapons we found confirms the importance of the ground activity of our forces to remove the threat to the northern settlements.
But the IDF suffered one of its worst days of losses in Lebanon, with 5 soldiers killed Thursday and quite a number wounded, seen here being evacuated to Israeli hospitals. In Gaza, the IDF says it's eliminated a Hamas commander who on October 7th led the attack on a bomb shelter that killed 16 Israelis, with 4 others captured, including Israeli-American Hirsch Goldberg-Polin, who was later executed. The IDF said this Hamas terrorist, Mohammed Abu Itawi, was an employee of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which UNRWA itself has now confirmed.
Mohammed Abu Itawi commanded the attack on the bomb shelter in Reim, where young people fleeing the Nova Music Festival were taking cover.
Iranians are showing their deep links with Hezbollah, protesting the deaths of Hezbollah's top leaders from Israeli airstrikes and chanting death to Israel. The head of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard says the U.S. anti-missile defense system that America has recently placed in Israel won't be enough to protect the Jewish state. Major General Hussein Salami said if Israel starts attacking Iran, you cannot win this conflict. We will destroy you. Israel reportedly delayed a strike on Iran after a U.S. intelligence leak of Israel's attack plans, according to the Times newspaper in Britain. Actual targets weren't leaked, but those are likely to include missile-launching sites, since they pose Iran's main threat to Israel. Coming up, where is Israel in its war with jihadist neighbors? We'll hear from retired General Amir Avivi. Retired General Amir Avivi from Israel's Defense and Security Forum has his finger on the pulse of Israel's fight for existence. We caught up with him for the latest. Take a look. General Amir Avivi, founder of the IDSF, thanks so much for joining us. A lot of people want to know what's the status of the campaigns in the north and in the south. In the south, Yahya Sinwar has been eliminated. How would you describe the battle going on in Gaza right now?
So obviously this is a major blow to Hamas. The IDF set to the humanitarian zone in the south. Israel just today apprehended their 150 terrorists. So this is basically moving forward very fast, and the enemy is very, very nervous. I think the IDF is having a very big success in the north and of Gaza. Hamas capabilities have been dramatically degraded.
You describe what's going on in the north. There's boots on the ground in southern Lebanon, and Israel has decapitated much of Hezbollah leadership and striking financial and economic targets in Beirut and other places. So how would you describe what's going on with Hezbollah?
Yeah, so Hezbollah is in a very difficult situation. Almost all their leadership was decapitated on the strategic level, but also on the tactical level. Their funds are being targeted. A lot of the rocket launchers were destroyed. They still have a certain capability, but it's being degraded every day. The IDF has taken control of all the towns on the Lebanese side, along the border. These towns were basically military terror bases of Hezbollah. This was the area where they really planned to launch an attack into Israeli towns, as Hamas did on the 7th of October. And the IDF has seized this area. It's destroying all the infrastructure. It has killed more than 1,500 terrorists.
Final question, General. Now everybody's anticipating an Israeli attack on Iran. What do you see in terms of that attack, and what would be the ramifications here in the Middle East?
So I think the important message is that this attack is the beginning of a military campaign against Iran, which will take many months, and it will go beyond the upcoming elections and the beginning of the next administration. And this is why, what will be the next administration? What are going to be the policies? How strong the next administration will be willing to stand against this evil regime? This will really define what will happen in 2025.
Do you see Iran having the capability of hurting Israel? It's already tried twice and with minimal damage. And also, how important is the front with Jordan and Iran trying to destabilize the Hashemite kingdom?
Yeah, so Iran, they have ballistic missiles. This is dangerous. And we need to deal with this, and this is why the U.S. bringing also batteries to Israel of THAAD, it helps. Iranians are trying to undermine all the countries in the Middle East and also Jordan, and in order to stop this aggression, we need to dismantle the whole axis. So Israel is dismantling Hamas and Hezbollah, but we need a U.S. coalition to dismantle also the militias in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, and also target directly Iranian capabilities. It's achievable. They are not as strong as people might think. And I think it's about time that the world deals with this, and really we change the whole fate and reality of the Middle East and of the West overall, because this is not just going to impact the Middle East. This is also going to impact what's happening in Europe, talking about Russia, and also in the Pacific. Once the U.S. will show strength and leadership, this will deter everybody. And if it doesn't happen, we might see a World War III.
It's a great analysis. General Amivi, thanks so much for joining us.
Up next, a Canadian pastor shares about Iranian Christians and Muslims with the heart for Israel.
Pastor Adam Gabelli has a front row seat on how God is moving in the lives of Iranians in Canada. He works in Vancouver, which has a large Iranian community, and stopped by our studio while he was in Jerusalem for the High Holy Days. Adam Gabelli, great to be with you. You have a unique insight into Iranian believers that have come from Iran to the West. Tell us what they're like.
It's been such a pleasure, Chris, to see God moving in the Iranian world. Of course, we were hearing about what God's been doing in Iran with the explosion of so many coming to faith in Yeshua. But I have the privilege of seeing in the diaspora, in Canada particularly, many come to faith. Many come to faith, many hungry to learn more about Jesus and leave behind that radical Islam that they grew up under in Iran.
What kind of transformation are they going through?
Well, many are just leaving because of the economic hardships. The Iranian regime, as we know, is not investing in their people, but investing in terror proxies around the world to hurt Israel. So the people are suffering, and so whatever they can do to leave Iran, they have been doing, whether they go through Turkey or through some other Middle Eastern countries as a leaping point to go to North America. And once they get there, they're so open to the gospel, and we see them accepting Yeshua, accepting Jesus, and then loving Israel. It's like an immediate thing. But I've even noticed that there's many Muslim background Iranians that actually have a heart for Israel, and they're hoping that Israel would be a hope to change things in their region.
Yeah, what are their prayers for Israel?
Well, you know, when the regime sent over those ballistic missiles, I'm in contact with many Iranian Christian leaders, and they would be saying, Adam, we're praying. We're coming to that place. We're calling a meeting in April when there was that long launch, and it was a couple hours before those rockets were coming here to the land of Israel. They called a meeting to pray that not one missile would have touched the ground, and that it would be everything that was intended for evil against Israel would be turned back on their radical regime.
Now Iran is anticipating an attack by Israel. What are Iranians praying now about? You know, it's interesting, Chris. They're hoping that attack from Israel would be the tipping point for their nation. You know, I can't divulge many details because some of the ones that are in the land, we have to protect their identity. But they are really praying that Israel would be that force that would overturn what they've been suffering for the past decades. Unfortunately, they've lost all hope in the West doing anything. But they're praying that Israel would be that savior, to say, for the Iranian people. You know, what they're telling me, Chris, is that 95% of the Iranians in Iran don't want this regime. And we're hoping and we're praying, and I'm joining in their prayers, that this would be that tipping point for them. And how can people in the West be joining them in prayer and praying for them? Well, I would encourage people to pray for continued boldness, that the gospel would be shared. Of course, they have to do it in many secretive ways. Some of the organizations that I'm involved with in Canada will have undisclosed conferences and locations in the Middle East and different countries where they'll bring in underground church leaders to strengthen them and send them back in. So pray first that there would be this boldness to continue to share the love of Yeshua, the streets of Tehran, Isfahan, Qom, the Shiraz, all those cities, and as well that the right leaders would present themselves to be a voice together with the might of the IDF. That's what they're praying. Yeah. And are they looking for the day after when that tipping point does happen? Yeah, there's many have discussed what it would be like. You know, they've told me, said, Pastor Adam, we can't wait to bring you to Iran. And me as a Jewish believer in Yeshua, what a joy that would be to be able to hold gospel crusades and to be able to be there and encourage the churches and see churches built. It's amazing when we dream this way with God. Yeah. Adam Cabelli, thanks for your insight into something many people may not realize. Thank you, Chris.
Still ahead, easing traffic and saving lives. Israeli innovation making a difference.
Israel is known for its innovations that help make life easier around the globe. One issue now being tackled affects and often frustrates most of us each day: traffic. Paul Strand reports from Tel Aviv on the effort to push the rush back into the rush hour.
Arn, traffic. Everybody hates it. But one Israeli company has come up with a system to make traffic flow much more smoothly, that can turn lights exactly when needed, warn drivers away from potential accidents, and unsnarl rush hour commutes.
It's an invention of No Traffic, headquartered here in Tel Aviv. When the company is enlisted to take over a community's traffic system, No Traffic puts these sensors at intersections that then connect to sophisticated artificial intelligence.
And from that point on, the system works by itself autonomously.
CEO Tal Kreisler says these artificial eyes then watch movements in and around those intersections.
Private vehicles, buses, pedestrians, bicycles, scooters, whatever.
AI then proceeds to orchestrate traffic flow in order to keep it moving safely and quickly. That's led to amazing improvements in limiting the time motorists are held up.
We've managed to cut dramatic amount. We're talking about 70% of delay time.
With vehicles more computerized than ever, this new system will be able to communicate directly with individual drivers. That could lead to a warning about a pedestrian potentially in a blind spot about to cross in front of them. Another safety element is the system's ability to gauge if an oncoming vehicle might run a red light. If so, it can alert nearby drivers while also changing other lights to red at that intersection to prevent collisions. When accidents do happen, it can immediately contact first responders, then give them green lights all the way.
About 70% of fatality cases happening in the first hour after the accident. So literally every minute that we are saving, literally saving life.
Research shows an updated traffic system is sorely needed worldwide. That's because an additional 90 million cars hit the road each year. Traffic congestion increases 12% annually. As for those lights that hold you up block after block,
the way that we are operating them is remained the same for the last 100 years or so.
And there's little to no connection from intersection to intersection.
Most of the intersections out there are not connected to anything. They just run by themselves.
With no traffic sensors and artificial intelligence saturating a city's traffic grid, it enables each intersection to communicate with all the others. That allows the system to make split-second decisions to keep traffic moving. These sensors are designed to withstand the wear and tear that comes from constantly being out in the elements. Ian Fountain and his lab techs ensure each piece can stand up to the most extreme conditions.
We put them in the ovens, we heat them, we cool them, we add humidity.
In Fahrenheit, that's a range from -31 to a super hot 167 degrees. Now that a number of states like Florida, Arizona, and California utilize the system, no traffic is found that in a mid-sized city, its platform has reduced waiting times by as much as 50% or more. That efficiency can remove around 26,000 tons of CO2 emissions each year. That's like the pollution from 5,700 cars simply vanishing. To Chrysler, it's all positive transformation.
Improving our life, reducing emissions, generating massive amounts of time that we can now spend with our loved ones. And I think this is one of the things that we are the most proud of, like literally transforming the world to a better place.
The atmosphere and attitudes in Israel make it easier for an innovative system like No Traffic's to be created here. Innovators are welcomed and cherished. Smart forward thinking is valued and rewarded. And Israelis see themselves as people who can solve global problems, both large and small, who can dream up solutions not yet seen, but waiting to be dreamed. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Tel Aviv.
Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media and access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And please keep praying for the hostages and for the peace of Israel and Jerusalem. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.